You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Relax my voice a little bit.
Does your voice not feel relaxed?
No, whenever we start off, I'm always nervous. And my voice is...
Hello, I'm on a podcast.
It takes me a minute to allow my voice to relax and allow my voice to actually come out.
The learning curve of listening to your voice over and over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. I think about that so much because when we grew up, this episode, by the way, is going to be going into the past a little bit. It's different. We're going to try something different. We're going to look back.
It's going to be some reflection. First time ever.
But I was thinking about growing up, how weird it was when you would hear your voice.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's what I sound like.
There were so
that's not me.
Opportunities to do that.
Yeah.
It wasn't something, I think nowadays we hear our voices all the time because of our phones, right? Where we're recording content. I mean, not everybody records content with their phone, but they're recording videos. They're recording, so I think we hear our voices a lot more now than we did when we were growing up. Because back then it was like if you had the toy tape recorder or, do you know what I mean? Or the video cameras weren't really that big of a thing either.
Maybe, yeah, because you're seeing yourself like interacting on social media. But I'm like, how many messages? Because I'm like, yeah, everybody. You have Marco Polo, you have like Snapchat, you have all of these messaging apps, but you're not really going back and listening to your message. You're just like sending it. So you don't really, but if you're talking on your reels and you see, like most people are uploading some sort of a reel. So
some sort of
I think it's more common, but I don't think it's as common as we think it is. Maybe. We're so like...
I remember when the podcast started, how big of because obviously you're in the middle of the episode, you're recording the episode or whatever, right? And then I would go back and edit the episode and put the episode together, and trying to listen to my voice was a nightmare in the beginning. It was really hard.
That's funny. I just had like awareness that you didn't have the same, because it wasn't hard for me to listen to my voice. It was hard for me to talk, but it wasn't hard for me to listen to my voice. And I'm like, how was it hard for you to listen to your voice? You were on the radio just as much as I was. And then I realized you didn't have playback. You weren't like doing the calls. So that was a new experience for you.
You're talking about like
way in the past.
Not the
past
radio.
Life. Yeah.
You're like, that time period when I was a DJ.
Yeah, that's right.
For that morning show.
DJ
we're talking
Jazzy
about
Craig.
Back when Craig was a cop and Steph was a 911 dispatcher.
So we were always like, there was always playback. Like everything's recorded. It's always playback, and then had to cue call. So I was so familiar with the sound of my own voice. And we were in the same field in a sense. So I'm like, you're familiar with the sound of your own voice too. And
not at all.
Just now clicked in my noggin that you weren't familiar with hearing your own voice.
There has to be some sort of
bizarre.
like...
How did I like miss something so obvious?
There's got to be some sort of scientific term for that thing that happens when you hear your voice for the first time or the first couple of times.
Complete shock.
Right. Where you're like, that's what I sound like? That like...
It's mortified. You never like it.
But like what I'm trying to understand, like maybe we should Google, but like that moment, because everybody has that moment of like surprise, shock, awe, or whatever it is when you hear your voice for the first time. And I bet that is something like,
Is that a term?
They call it whatever.
Audio surprise.
Audio reverb issue or something, right? Anyways, I don't know.
Spontaneous audio absorption recognition.
Yeah.
It's an acronym.
It definitely doesn't affect me anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even register it anymore because we do so much, right?
Just realize
content
how long we've
and
talked
recording,
about this.
and we've spent a good time, good amount of time.
So if you're not familiar with your own voice, get familiar with it.
Yeah.
Your voice is safe.
Start a podcast and then edit the first episode.
Do you know what's really cool too? It's because like having the contrast of the stark differences of it. And this is something like play around with and get familiar with, because it's kind of like goes into perceptions and integration in a sense. Because I was familiar with my voice from how I sounded talking in my head. And then hearing my voice played back to me was like, what the fuck is that? Who is that? That's not me. That's what I sound like. And I was really subconscious about speaking. But still, they were two different people and they were very distinct. I could hear the voices very distinct. The differences, like I sound like this in my head, but on playback, I sound like this. It's so weird. And then I started recognizing it more. It wasn't such a surprise. I was used to I'm like, okay, that's how I sound. That's how I sound. Here's how I sound, but on playbacks, and I was okay with it. And somewhere along the way, and see if you've there, or you know where I'm going, I don't hear the difference anymore. They sound the same. I hear it, and the way it sounds in my head is the way it sounds on playback. It somehow has integrated into the same voice.
It's so weird, isn't it?
It's like, that's weird.
It's so bananas because obviously we hear ourselves all the time. Like every time we speak, we're hearing our own voice.
Yeah. It's different in your head because you have that vibration. Like you hear different things in your body. Like I can hear this. Like you can hear things in your body because you have that vibration.
I know, but
it's
like
so close.
Because I think that's the confusion is like, I hear my voice every time I talk, but then somehow when that voice gets recorded and then played back in some capacity or in some way, and you hear it, then it's like, what? We need to move off this subject because this isn't what this episode is about. And unless there's like some other profound
I just thought it was
that,
cool that like, I think it's pretty cool that it's integrated.
Yeah, I do too.
It's the same voice. Is yours the same voice now?
It is, yeah.
See?
Yeah, I don't hear the weirdo talking on the on the radio anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't hear it back and be like, that's not what I sound like.
That's
Is
weird.
that what I sound like? I'm like, oh no, that's me. That's what I sound like.
Right? It just sounds the same now.
Yeah.
It's an integration, a
Sounds all
blending
the
of
same.
both.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Integrated.
So we had this thing, and by we, I mean me. I had this thought, and then I shared it with Steph, and then it's something that we've kind of kicked around and thought about. And I've spent more time thinking about this topic, I think, than you have, simply because it really resonated for me. And so the whole idea is we're at this point in our lives, and you're probably at a similar point if you're listening to this podcast. And we're at a point, and it's oftentimes referred to as like the midlife crisis, but it's a transitory point in our life where we have the opportunity to step into like creating the rest of our life the way that we want it to be, as opposed to living our life the way that we thought we were supposed to. And I mean, you could summarize it in that sense. And over the last couple of years, we've had to kind of navigate that journey of quote unquote, the midlife crisis that we're going through. And it's continuing, right? I don't think it's like a 1 year or a 2 year thing. I think it's more likely a 5, 6, 7, 8 year time span where we're experiencing whatever it is that we're experiencing, right? That whole midlife transitory moment between who you are and who you want to be. And I think that's a good way to frame this topic, is it's like who you are, who you're supposed to be, and who you want to be. Anyways, in healing, and we do this all the time too, right? This is something that we talk to people about, but it's also like in our own space where if you have a sensation, if you have a feeling, if you're going through something and it feels, I don't even know how to explain it. It's not like it feels like a certain way, but essentially I started to reflect back on when I felt like this before. Like, have I ever felt this way before? And it dawned on me that what is happening right now inside of my own like mind, body, soul, as well as like my life, is I'm trying to be the person that I really want to be, and I'm trying to become the person that I really want to be. And in order to do that, I'm butting up against all of these perceptions, all of these ideas, all of this stuff, both from my own head as well as from society and everything like that. I feel like I'm rambling so much.
Well, you're on a podcast. You're supposed to talk. You're doing so good.
Okay. Thank you.
And your voice sounds great.
But I realized that this felt very similar to me from when I was a teenager, and that time frame of transitioning from like being a teenager, being a child, to quote unquote being an adult. And it felt very similar. And so we started talking about it and started thinking about it. And what it now feels like to me is through the lens of becoming a teenager. Like you're a child, you're adolescent, you're a preteen, you're a teenager, you're 16, 17, 18 years old. And during those years, those are very formative years for everybody, but you're figuring out life, you're figuring out who you are, where you fit, who you want to be. And oftentimes it's butting up against a lot of things that you've been told by your parents and by society. And especially schools are such a conformity, right? Like the vast majority of public schools in the country are designed to fit everybody into some singular little box. And those teenage years oftentimes come with a lot of rebellion when you're pushing back against all of those things and trying to become who you are. And then I think there are some people that end up breaking free from all of those societal expectations and familial expectations and even just the expectations on themselves, and they end up, becoming the version of themselves that they want to be during that time period. And then I think there's other people, and I think I fall into this secondary category, that eventually felt like they gave in to the pressures of what society and the family and everything else was kind of saying was, quote unquote, the normal trajectory of life, right? Graduate from high school, go to college, get a job, get a family, get a house, kind of that normal trajectory of life. And I feel like when I was during those formative years of the 16, 17, 18 years old, I was really pushing against all of these ideas. And then eventually I felt like I just gave in and became that. Like I became the version of whatever I was supposed to become based off of all of those programs. And now at this not same phase, but fast forward 20 years later, and now I'm in my early 40s, and it feels exactly the same. It feels like I'm trying to become this version of myself that I wanted to be when I was a teenager. I wanted to be this version of me. And now I'm trying to do that again, but I'm butting up against the same things where it's like, oh, we're supposed to, fall into conformity of whatever it is for this next phase of our life. Like, I think the midlife crisis is a very important part, just as that transition from childhood to adulthood. This is some sort of transition. I don't know if it's from adulthood into whatever the next thing is.
Adulthood.
Right.
Like pro-adulthood. Whoa, that was hard to say. Pro. Now I'm popping in the mic. Okay.
So tell me your thoughts, because I've rambled. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, and what we're going to break down is the idea that these two time periods are very, very similar, because it is the opportunity for us to become what we want to be, and then the choice is up to us, right? Do we do that, or do we become who we're supposed to be? And the supposed is based off of all those things that we mentioned, right? Societal views and ideas and beliefs that you have about yourself and everything else. So what are you, again, I asked you for your thoughts and then I kept talking. So
no, you're good. Like I'm trying to decide I guess instead of spinning, I'll just give my experience instead of,
yeah.
Does that work? I'll try my best. I'm in my head about how my voice sounds.
That's a great way to start the podcast, right? Let's make it really awkward now, because we're just listening to our voice. Is that what I sound?
Do I always breathe like this in the mic?
God.
All I can hear is back up, and then remember to come forward when you talk. I'm suddenly very preoccupied with my sound. Can you hear my heartbeat? I can hear my heartbeat. Can y'all hear my heartbeat? That's funny. So for me, my journey with that is pre-recognition, pre-awareness, and post-awareness, right? So we've had this conversation, and what reflected back to me was the rebellious time, the total rebellious time, and how at the time it was how detrimental the rebellious time was, right? How detrimental, how
the teenage years for you.
How terrible choices I was making for myself, how they impacted the family, how all of that shame that comes on, and then later recognizing, oh, that was actually a really healthy thing for me to do. It doesn't mean that I was making healthy choices, and that's where we get kind of confused. I made the choices I made for survival, and I'm glad. I don't need shame for being a rebellious teenager. I don't need shame for the ways that I lashed out and the problems that, because I found a way to survive. But it also doesn't mean that it was healthy choices, and that there's choices that I don't need to reflect back on and grow from, right?
Yeah.
So, and that was that kind of thing. But where I had awareness is that because it came from another guilt. And after I got through with the guilt of the rebellious, what happened next, the stage that I didn't have awareness, was the conformity. And the way that it's like you have that time of saying, no, this isn't how I'm going to live my life. I'm not doing it according to you. I'm doing it my way. This is who I am. This is what I'm going to do. And then that switch happens after the teenage rebellion, where you like settle in and like, okay, I'm going to play by your rules now. And even though you still have separation, right? You're not doing it just like your parents. You're different, but obviously you're repeating patterns, right? And you conform. You've like busted out, and it's like you somehow got broke down to where you're like, okay, you were right. I was wrong. I'm going to play by these rules. This is how I'm going to proceed from here on out. And it's like really have been beaten down in a sense, because or at least for me, I wasn't playing by like the healthy rules. I'm like, this is like the way down, the suppress, and this is how I'm supposed to act. This is how I'm supposed to show up. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is like, these are my roles, and these are how I'm supposed to raise my kids. And I thought it was healthy and loving because I was now able to see how destructive I was a teenager. So there was this whole other level that came from, like, I don't even know what to call it, to where then I reconformed and doubled down on doing the right thing, of making up for past discretions and doing the right thing. And another flip happens, right? Where we hit this part of our life where we start being like, actually, that's really unhealthy. I see all this damages that I was causing there. This is like, I'm not playing by these rules. I'm not going to conform. Now, this is just like extremes. I realize I'm pinpointing extremes, but in my space, this is how it showed up. It presented with extremes. So whether it's like too mild for you or too extreme, you get to figure out where it is on your journey. But having seeing how terrible the conformity was, and how in conformity, the thing that you're trying to do is help others conform, because now you understand, and now you're going to help others understand, meaning your kids. Like, no, this is what you do. This is how you behave. This is how you show up. This is what you're allowed to do. Say this, don't say this. All of the ways that you are guiding and parenting, but you're actually just like conforming and trying to mold them into what now you think is best. But it's not really what you think is best, is what you have bought into, the conformity to a point. And then busting out of that again, like breaking the rules, not doing the things that are the responsible things, in a sense, doing the things that are risky. And I don't mean like dangerous, risky behavior of like putting yourself like, I'm not saying don't go get in high-speed chases. Don't be like, but you don't have to do it the way that society is mapped out for you to do it. You don't have to do it the way that your parents did. You don't have to do it the way that it looks like the successful is doing. You can. If that works for you, by all means, go for it. But there's more options than that. Like, there's so many more options that we didn't realize were accessible to us. And this whole other like breaking out comes with remorse for the conformity. So it's really hitting again in this rebellious way, but it's not acting out rebellious as much as it is like, it feels like you're just like not participating in the chaos. It's like you're just stepping out of you're stepping off the ride. You're stepping off the whole thing. You're just like getting out of line for the whatever track you're on, and looking around and being like, oh, there's other options. I'm actually going to like start to go see what's over here. I'm going to move aside. And it's this calm energy, but it looks like chaos for everybody else. Like, what are you doing? You're being reckless. Don't you know what you're ruining your future. You're risking it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And it's like, great question. I'm going to go figure it out, and you don't have to worry about it. So it's just seeing those levels of where breaking out of conformity into a rebellion is like, it's like taking the shackles off. And sometimes it's messy. Sometimes you make a whole lot of mistakes, and sometimes it just looks to others like you're really jacking everything up. And who knows, maybe you are. Maybe you'll figure it out down the road, another rebellion or a conformity. I don't know. I don't know what the future is, but I know that we always find ways that the things that we thought we did so wrong, maybe we can see right in, and the things that we thought we were getting it right, we're like, what the fuck why did I do that?
Wrong in those.
You have to those are hard.
The conformity part, I think, is so that's what we're talking about, I think. And I don't know why I didn't come across that word, or because as soon as you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, it's totally conformity, right? In your teenage years, you're trying to do anything other than conform. And then you either I can see it so clearly, or at least my perception of it, where there was such a path laid out before me. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't like I didn't come from a family where it was like, you're going to be a doctor your whole life. You're going to be it wasn't so very clearly defined that it is for some people. But at the same time, it was like, this was the path that I was supposed to walk. This is the direction that I was supposed to go. This is what was going to happen. And it wasn't even necessarily it was so interesting too, because I don't feel like, again, anybody was forcing me to do something. I didn't have overly controlling parents that were trying to, steer me in the direction of going to college or what college. I had a lot of freedom to be able to decide what I wanted to do. And yet it still felt like I had a path that I was supposed to walk. And the conformity aspect of it, I've never thought of that. I've never thought of that word conform and what it really means to me and what it feels like. And I have what feels like a deep-seated resistance to conformity.
Right.
I'm in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to go do the opposite of what they want me to conform to. Mm-hmm. And yet it felt like during that time period when I was a teenager that eventually I did just give in to it. But it was interesting because it doesn't feel like I gave into it, when I was 18. I felt like it was probably, a few years later or in my early 20s somewhere.
Was it when you started hearing Dad?
Maybe.
Yeah.
It might have been, right? It might have been when I had kids. And that was the other thing too, right? I mean, because there's an aspect of conformity, because what you said earlier too about how eventually you'll teach your kids how to conform. And that sucks.
Yeah.
But yet I understand why we do it, because you think it's safe.
Yeah.
This is how they're going to stay safe. This is how they're not going to get ostracized and bullied. And, if you conform to the plan of graduating from high school, going to college, getting a job, getting married, getting a house, you're going to be safe.
Retirement, something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to be safe. Mm-hmm. These other things that maybe are less secure or less certain, they don't feel safe. Nobody wants their child to graduate from high school and then be like, I've decided I'm just going to travel Europe. You don't have any money. I'll figure it out. Right. How are you going to get there? I don't know. Nobody wants their kid to just walk out of the house and, be king from Kung Fu wandering the land at that point. Mm-hmm. And yet there was a huge part of me that's all I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I wanted to just hop on the train and be a hobo for the next 4 years or something, right?
Still waiting for that backpacking trip across Europe myself.
But the conformity aspect of it, it's this love-hate relationship where I think we do have to conform to society's roles or boxes that they want to place us in. Do you know what I mean? If you want to, have a place at the table, I guess, in society, if you want to be a part of society, you have to conform to some extent. Mm-hmm. And yet the balance back and forth between that and autonomy and the struggle to because that framing it around conformity is exactly what it feels like at this point too, where it's it's very clear we don't have anybody telling us what we should be doing, even though they have their opinions about what we should be doing. But do you know what I mean? It's not like if you're 17 and 18 years old, you might have parents that are you need to do that. And you might still have parents at 42 telling you what you should do. But at least in our circumstances, we don't have anybody necessarily telling us what we should be doing. And yet we're still.
I do. I'm still getting that. It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
Do you conform with what, it's not even just the societal views. Do you conform with what other people want?
Yeah.
And in doing so, risk losing what it is that you truly want.
Right.
Like, I feel like that's the thing is like, I lost some part of me when I had to conform.
Mm-hmm.
And now that part is coming back and raising its hand and being like, hey, did you want to come over here and be who you are? Like, do you want to waken this part that you put to rest 20 years ago and let it come back out and become, like, could I give the next 20 years of my life over to 17-year-old version of me that wanted to be whatever?
Yeah.
And I mean, that doesn't mean suddenly like I'm, 17 years old and quitting my job and moving to California to be an actor. That's not what I'm talking about. And if that's your path, that's great. But I'm talking about like
marry a 20-year-old.
Well, I think that's what happens.
Yeah.
I think that's why, all the stereotypes around men going through that time period, through the midlife crisis where they, they get a divorce and then they marry a 23-year-old and they get a convertible or whatever.
I mean, I'm totally down for a convertible. I'm really feeling the convertible energy right now.
You are feeling the convertible
Yeah, that's not
energy.
even a joke. Like, I totally want a convertible.
But there is something going on between these two time periods. I feel like they're connected.
Yeah.
The midlife crisis and that time period when you're a teenager.
I think, like, I'm drawing some, like, I pointed out one with you with, like, is it when you started hearing dad? It's just curious, like we're throwing these we're getting curious about this space, right? We're not saying this is exactly what happens. This is like these are some of the things that happen. These are some of the things that happen. There's also, the kids out there that never rebelled, that conformed right out of the gate and never like rocked the boat. And maybe in their 30s or 40s, all of a sudden they're like, fuck this.
Yeah.
There's so many different ways. This is just like some of the possibilities that it can show up to get curious about. To get curious about where you are based off of where you were told you should be. The reward that you had for behaving a certain way that was the conformation of, whoever was in charge based off of a punishment for which didn't ideal. And some of those things are beneficial. Some of those things are really destructive. And some of them are just risks and dreams and leaps that they were too afraid to take. And that instill that in you to try and keep you safe. Like, I'm guilty of that. I'm so guilty of that. And I'm so mad. Like the thing that's like hitting up. Anyways, I don't need to get into a list of all the things that I have done wrong. And then I'm getting like, it's really bombarding me right now. All of I think this is a healthy action. I thought this was a loving action. I thought this was a safe action. I thought this was like the right choice. Even like the really hard choices I thought, and I'm like, man, those were so wrong. And I have to like, it's really like, I'm seeing them in a whole new light. But like some of this part that's kind of stemming out is I started to conform before I became a parent. Like the cogs started going, like I started having like the weight of how wrong I was became apparent. And then once that I could see, then the remorse and the regret and the amends. Like I wanted to make it up to my parents. I wanted to prove to them that I was worthy of love. I wanted to try and earn my grandparents' love back, my aunts, uncles. I was like, I want to be loved by my family. So instead of doing it this way, I'm going to now follow your rules. Mm-hmm. Please love me, please. And so it was
conform hardcore.
Yeah, but it didn't start that hard. It was like these little things of like, where I started like checking in and checking things off the box. And then first pregnancy test that came back positive. I was like, everything is done. I am done. I will everything in my power to keep this one safe, to love this one too. And I didn't have a healthy boundary to set. So I didn't know, like there was choices that I made that I wouldn't have made now. There's a lot of choices that I'm glad I made, but there's so many choices now that I would have done different. But I didn't know. All I knew it was that it was no longer about me. It was no longer about me. And somewhere along it being no longer about me, I lost my identity. I lost what I knew was right and wrong because it was like, I've clearly fucked everything up, so I'm just going to do it your way now because this person is so important to me. And then as you start to go like this stage, like our kids are like, our baby is about to graduate. And it's this stage of being like, we should have hit it sooner, and we did hit it sooner in a lot of ways, right? But it's not as easy, or at least it wasn't for us. And like the younger generation's doing a way better job at it. Like they're doing a way better job. But when there was other people at stake, I wasn't willing to take the risks for myself. I wasn't willing to be independently me. And like the risk did not seem worth it. And why would I, like, I'm not just, and now that it's starting to like be, I can be more risky now. I can be more, even though we've done it, maybe sooner than we should have, but who knows, right? Maybe not. We still had all kids at home when we completely changed up our lives, and we continue to do it. And I'm glad because we showed them that you can break the rules. Even though we kept saying, follow the rules. We're breaking the rules. We kept showing them ways that they could break the rules. And all of them are really breaking a lot of rules, right? They're not conforming. And then I can see where they are conforming. But they're questioning that more than we did. And so I think like it keeps getting better, but we can see, like, I don't know. I'm still fleshing this out. So I'm still fleshing it out.
What do you feel like at this point in your life? Because the dance between conformity equals safety and non-conformity equals risk. Like, what is happening right now in your life that feels like a similar dance where if we, like you and I are on the precipice of becoming this new version of who we are, and what are we having to confront conformity with in regards to that? Do you know what I mean? Like, as we're in our early 40s and we're moving into this next phase of our life, and it's not like, I remember thinking that the midlife crisis means like you either choose to commit to, okay, now I'm on the downhill slope and I'm dying, or I'm going to fight and hold on to every last little tendril of my childhood and some innocence and some sort of like freedom. And if I don't, then I'm committing to essentially, I'm dying, I'm dead, I'm on my path to death now.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like that at all now that we're here. Yeah. So like 10 years ago, I would have said like, well, that midlife crisis, whatever. But in it now, it doesn't feel like I'm like, if we conform to it, truthfully, the conformity part of it, if it feels like if we were to conform at this point in our life to what society says we should conform to, then it would be like into this category of you're on a 20, 30, 40 year plan now working toward your death. So you need to start preparing for that, where you need to, health becomes a very big issue. Like we need to go, I need to get my, that part of my body that the doctor has to stick his finger in my asshole to look at. What's that?
Your asshole?
Not my asshole.
Your prostate?
Yeah, I got to get my prostate checked. Like all of these things, like we're heading into the retirement
like, if you can't
years.
Remember your asshole, maybe we got to get another check first. I'm sorry, I totally missed that.
But it feels like that's the conformity part.
Yeah. Okay.
And we are choosing to not go that route.
Oh, it's the conformity. Like, this is when everything hurts. This is when you get old. This is when your body starts breaking down.
Yeah,
this
like
is
if you choose to conform to what society says is
Mm-hmm.
this next phase of life that happens after the midlife, then that's the path where it's like, oh, I guess like we should probably get on that journey of now.
The most common thing they say is like, welcome to being 40.
Right.
Welcome to being 40. I've heard like that's so like, welcome to being 40. I'm like, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like, it feels like a choice where we can either conform to the path of retirement and AARP and getting on like Centrum Silver or something like that so that we have our daily vitamin, and then sit and watch television all day long and complain about how we should stop drinking coffee in the morning. Like we're kind of dancing this space of like, it feels like we could very easily slip into this conformity part of what life is supposed to look like in this part of our life, right? And I have this other part of me that's like, fuck all that. I know what that path is. Like, I know what it is to say, hey, forget about your dreams and your hopes and just do this thing now. And I'm like, I'm not going to. This time I'm going to choose my hopes and my dreams. Yeah. And I'm going to go towards what I want in life. And I'm risking, or at least it feels like I'm risking all of these things. And it's very, that's why I say it's very similar to the risk of not conforming when you're a teenager or when you're a young adult comes with like, well, how am I going to, like, where am I going to live? How am I going to, buy groceries? How am I going to pay my bills? How am I even going to get bills to pay? Like all of these questions as an adult. And then it's like, well, that's the path. That's why we have a path for you. You go to college, you get a job, you get you find yourself in a relationship, you have 2 kids and a dog, and then you move into a house. There's the path that we can show you what you're supposed to do next. And this other path of like, what am I supposed to do next? They're like, we don't fucking know. That's why we all conformed, because we couldn't face the fear of what am I supposed to do next? The unknown. I don't know. But I think that unknown thing of like what's next and being willing to confront it and face it and to go towards it unlocks this part of us that is like, oh my God, I'm free now. I'm free from that other path that they had laid out for me that I did not want to walk. Yeah. Right. But I was too afraid to walk my own path. I was too afraid to go in this direction of the unknown. And it felt like that when I was a teenager, and it feels like that now. And when I was a teenager, I gave into the fear and I walked the path that they told me to walk. And I don't want to do that again. What do you think? You want to come with me?
I don't know. It depends on where you're going. We'll see if it works for me.
Fucking unknown, babe. Yeah. I don't know where it is.
Like the thing that's feeling different for me in this space is realizing that, like my boundaries and what I choose in my life isn't a measure of the love that I have for others, even when it's against what they want me to do. And so many choices that I made were, of course I love you, of course I'm gonna, and they like weren't even seen that way. But like for me, I thought I was acting out of love for others. And so being like, well, this is actually what's right for me. And it doesn't go with, I'm not exactly doing what anybody else wants me to do. And even though it may very much feel like it's because I don't love them, and I hope it doesn't, it's not a measure of my love. And it's hard. And I'm still trying to figure out, like I'm really good at breaking rules, and I'm really good at not breaking the rules. It's so funny because I'll just like fuck everything up or take really big risks. And then we'll like have recipes or directions that I'm like, we have to follow this to a T. Like I'm very,
I love cooking with you. Like, how much did you put? I don't know if I can put some in there. It says that you need to put 1 teaspoon. And I'm like, this is the teaspoon that's the tablespoon. Like,
okay, that's not cooking. That's MCT oil. And it sits in your 1 teaspoon and 1 tablespoon affect your body very differently.
I don't know. I squirted some in the cup. Right?
Same with like, yeah. So I feel a little bit of shame right now.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I was just being playful and silly.
Oh, no, you didn't do anything wrong. That's just what I'm feeling. Yeah, I'm really struggling with this. This is a really a unique space where I am navigating it through with lenses of what does this feel like for me? How do I want to proceed? How do I want to feel like in the future? And moving towards that instead of how it affects other people. And there's a really big part of me that despises that. I'm like, you selfish POS, you know?
What does it feel like if you were to, like, I'm curious, does it, like, what is the conformity path for a woman at your age? Like, what does that look like for her? And does it feel like you are confronting any of that right now, where you're like, this is the path that, quote unquote, you know, a woman my age would supposed to be walking towards, and I'm trying to resist it?
No, I'm that's not in my space right now. Like, or at least that's not on the front burners, because there's too much right now. There's like things that are a bigger.
There's stuff that's
there's
taking up
more
too much
risk.
space.
Yeah, there's that. So is that a factor in my life? I'm sure. And I'm sure it's bigger than I see. But the fact, like right now, that is so far in the, I don't have time to give a fuck about that. And I don't really care right now how that looks.
Through the lens of how we're framing this conversation, kind of as conformity and comparing it to these two different time periods in life, for you specifically, because it, like I said, it feels like very, very similar to that time period when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
Do you feel the same way? Does it feel the same for you? Do you have any correlation between how this is feeling in your body to how it felt in your body as a teenager?
Yeah, actually, I can answer that one. I've got healthy and toxic both coming out, right? There's the part of me that feels adventurous and possible and excited and like limitless. That feeling, right, that comes up, all of that stuff. Like the world is your you have your whole life ahead of you. This world is so big and there are so many possibilities and you have options. Like there's that part that's like, ooh, wow. And then there's other parts that I'm like, you know what? I think a house party sounds really good right now. Like there's kind of like, I feel like there's a part of me that wants to disengage hard, that wants to be a little like really get those like endorphins going from recklessness, taking the like just the fun way out and being like just total
reckless and wild and free
and all the, you know, saying like having a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But also like, so I'm trying to find the balance of what fun do I actually want to have and what part of me just wants to numb out. Like, am I going towards numbing out so I don't have to feel pain that I'm in? Am I going towards like head down, bulldozing towards goals? Or am I going to find a path that is not defined and is not said? Because like I have a whole future. I've got a lot of time, I think, maybe. You know, I feel like I'm living like I got a lot of time left, whether I do or not, you know, who knows? But like my mindset is I got a lot of time left. So I want to move this way and I want it to be fun. And I don't want to like lose these things. And I have to be like, I just have to, you know, what is that? Jesus, take the wheel. Like I have to just like let go. I have to figure it out. I'm going to get it wrong. I'm going to make the wrong choices. I'm going to choose something that is later, I'm going to look back on and be like, why the fuck did I choose that? And just being okay with all that means that I'm going to make a lot of right choices. And I'm going to look back and be like, I'm so glad that that's the direction I went. Like I'm going to see the progression, because so much I found in my experience, so much regret and pain. And I can't believe I made that choices have came from holding so tight and trying so hard to not make the wrong choices and trying to get it right and being so afraid of fucking it up. Because my whole history was like, you fucked up, 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 you fucked up. So I'm like, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up, don't fuck up. And how do I keep fucking up? Like my sole purpose is not to fuck up. How is everything I've done? So I'm just like, okay, I'm going to fuck it up. And that's okay. I'm going to fuck it up. And what's going to happen is going to happen, because I need to create space to get it right. I need to create space to let it go. I need to create space for myself and quit trying to mitigate all of these things that I literally have no control over, but somewhere along the way I got it in my head that it was my responsibility. Like, so I don't know. Like I'm just.
Imagine if you could tell 17-year-old Steph that exact thing.
Yeah.
Like, sweetheart, you're just going to fuck it up over and over and over and over again. And that's okay. You're still lovable. You're still okay. And what's best is just to trust yourself and do the best that you can and know that it's all going to work out okay. She'd be like, whatever, who's this crazy lady talking to me right now?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows what a 17-year-old.
Do you think that... Go ahead.
Do I think that what?
No, by all means.
I'm uncomfortable.
I know. So it sounded like you had a question for me.
Please say what you were going to say.
I was just going to ask you another question.
Okay. I don't want another question.
Exactly.
Why don't you try? Like,
me a question.
my brain is, I just got really overloaded
Mm-hmm.
and I was really vulnerable and I'm shutting down. And I'm like, this was like, everything is really loud. I said a lot of truths, a lot of hurt came out. And I'm like, I'm feeling very, like, oh, fuck, spotlight's on me. I just dug my own grave. Like, I just might as well jump in. So it's hard. So like, what can you take from that? Like you were mentioning like 17-year-old Craig or like teenage Craig. What does that look like? You said what it doesn't look like, but what does that look like? What do you want to allow that part of you? What does your energy want? What are you going towards? Do you notice what's it look like for you?
It feels like freedom.
Yeah?
Yeah, it feels like freedom. But it's like a new understanding of what that actually looks like. Because I remember very well, like, being, a teenager and just wanting freedom to do whatever it is that I wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to ever be told what to do.
Yeah.
I don't ever want anybody telling me. And I still have that hard time. Like, right now, I'm the only one that can kind of tell me what to do. And I don't really like it when I tell me what to do, but I'll at least do what I tell me what to do. But anybody else, I'm just like,
Right.
Right. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's kind of how I am. But the freedom that I feel like I'm going towards now is a truer sense of freedom than I was, or that I had awareness of at 17. At 17, it didn't feel like I was going towards freedom. It just felt like I was trying to break free against something else. Like, that's a good distinction, where at that time frame, when I was that age, it felt like I was trying to break free of something. Like, I can feel the sensation of like trying to pull away and still being like stuck to something, controlled by something, held on by something, right? Whether it's my parents, whether it's society, all of it kind of wrapped into one. I can just feel my body trying to pull free from this thing. And that's all I could see, was like, I need to get away from this feeling. I need to pull away. I need to break free. That's freedom. That's the direction. That's where I want to go. And now it feels like I'm not pulling away from anything. I'm just letting go. Like, I'm not having to pull away in resistance to something in order to be free. I can just let go. Like, I don't have to hold on to this thing anymore. Oh my goodness, that was a burp.
That was a release. You were letting go.
But it feels, framing it like that, that's kind of what it feels like, where when I was a teenager, I was pulling away and trying to break free. And then finally I had a sensation of like, oh, I did it. I broke free. And then I think I just got super scared. And metaphorically, literally, like however we want to look at it, but I just got very scared, not knowing what to do, and then gave in and conformed. And I feel scared now.
Yeah.
Right. I would say I feel more scared now than I did when I was 17 or 18 years old. And I think that level of fear that I have now is greater, simply because I have a better understanding of what life is, right? What I'm actually letting go of now in order to go towards that freedom that I glimpsed as a teenager. Because it's not like I want the freedom to do whatever it is that I want to do. I don't want anybody telling me what to do. Like, it's none of that anymore. It's just like, I no longer want to be confined. I no longer want to conform to the ideas in the beliefs that I've had about myself.
Yeah.
And the ideas that I've had about my life, the perceptions that I've carried, the expectations. That's another big thing that has really been prevalent for me, is the expectations that I have for my life and for the people in my life. And it's like, cool. Freedom equals letting go of expectations.
Right.
Letting go of the idea of what something is supposed to be. So I'm doing a lot of that.
Yeah.
And it's way fucking scary.
It's so hard too. You have expectations you don't even know until you feel the disappointment, until you feel let down, until you feel the fuck. You're like, I didn't even know that's what I wanted to happen until it didn't happen.
Right.
It's so tricky.
So for me, it is, I guess, to wrap all of this up into a nice pretty bow, which we're definitely not able to because this is such a weird topic. But it does feel like conformity is involved. There's something about, like, I'm just comparing these two time periods, right? That transition that takes place in your teenage life and then that transition that takes place in your midlife. And both time periods, I feel like, have such a similar energy to them, and it touches upon conformity, and it touches upon freedom, and it touches upon identity.
Yeah.
And like, I think belief's a very big part of it too. I think that for me at 17 and 18, I felt like I had a belief and an understanding of what the world was, and, you know, how I was supposed to, like, my beliefs have changed, but then they've also haven't, like, I feel like I still believe a lot of the same things that I believed when I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And I just have a richer understanding of things. So yeah, I think that unless you're able to navigate like the midlife crisis, this transition to midlife with some sense of maturity and understanding and accountability and reflection, then that's why it looks like the 40-year-old dude that gets the convertible and, you know,
goes completely off the rails.
Yeah, because it's so similar to what happened when he was a teenager or when they were a teenager. And so they're just repeating the same pattern over again instead of recognizing it as. There is another key part of it too, where I think there is something about the transitions that take place over the course of a life. And we have to, like, a transition is going from one place to the next, right? And in some ways, there's a version of, like, all the things that you have to let go of as a teenager is like your childhood. Like, I remember very much realizing, like, I'm in this big rush to become an adult, and I want to be, but then that means that, like, I have to let go of hanging out with my friends the way that I used to. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was real awareness that, like, oh, this part of my life wasn't going to happen again. I had to let go of some innocence, and I had to let go of the idea of things, and I had to let go of, like, the comforts of being a child and the securities of being a child in order to transition into the next phase of life. But that transitory experience wasn't modeled, wasn't handled, wasn't, you know, I was navigating it alone, or at least what felt like alone.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're supposed to navigate these transitory experiences alone. And there's a lot of talk about how rites of passage, and when we were hunters and gatherers or living in much smaller communities in earlier time frames than the one that we're currently in, right? Rites of passage were a very big deal, and there was ceremony, and there was, you know, sacred experiences that would take place during these transitory time periods in our life, so that we understood a death and a rebirth. We understood consequences for actions. We understood kind of the circle of fucking life in regards to the human experience, because we had those not sacrificial, sacred ceremonial experiences. And I think that they're undoubtedly, I don't know why we don't know about it, or it's not coming to my mind right now, or I haven't looked at it from this lens, but like, surely there was something for that midlife crisis too, right?
Yeah.
Where that, this is the next phase of your life, and this is what it looks like to transition into that phase. And I don't know, that I think that's a whole other kind of area of topic or, conversation, but I think I think it's correlated to this time because it is a transition. We're going from childhood into adulthood, and maybe we're going from adulthood into elderlyhood. And
maybe, yeah. Definitely.
So I don't know.
I don't know about like the
rites of passage thing.
No. That's a big deal. There's a lot of those things. I think they got changed, at least like Western culture is like rites of passage are, whether or not you need to, what kind of medical procedures you're supposed to look at. Is it time for mammograms and colonoscopies? That's your rites of passage, as opposed to like celebrations and like honoring and embodying. So there's a lot, like I don't know.
It feels like too that like the other thing too, I didn't feel prepared at all when I was a teenager, right? I'm like, I don't fucking know what to do. I just want to go, like, let me go. I'm trying to pull away. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll figure it out. Mm-hmm. I actually feel prepared now. Yeah. Like there's definitely unknowns. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen, because you and I aren't walking that normal path that we're supposed to be walking, right? We decided long before, and now we're just navigating it. But
yeah, we've been off that path for a long time.
Yeah, we're definitely walking our own path and heading in the direction that we want to go. And this transition time period feels very significant. However, where was I going? What did I say?
I'm sorry.
Gosh dang it, I had a point.
You were talking about how you feel prepared now.
Oh, yeah. Like that's a big difference, right? Where I feel very prepared. I feel like when I say I'll figure it out, as a teenager, when I said I'll figure it out, in the back of my mind, I'm like, I don't know what I'm sure somebody will tell me, right? I'm sure there's somebody that will tell me what to do. Like my figuring it out as a teenager was like, I'll ask somebody.
Really?
And my figuring out now is, of course, I'm still going to ask people. I'm still going to get help. Like, but I'm also like, I'll figure it out. Like, I know how to figure things out. I'm a good resource of information and knowledge and choices. So like, whatever's next in my life, I'll figure it out.
That's interesting. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I think I'm like fascinated by that, because I love that. When I was a teenager, I knew I was going to be fine. I knew I was going to figure it out. I knew that my path, like I just needed to like break free. And the problem was that I wasn't able to break free. Like I had full confidence that I knew what I was doing, and I knew what to do. And I kept getting told how like wrong I was, how dumb I was, how I didn't have a clue, how I was doing it wrong. I was fucking up my whole life. All of these things, I getting told of how I didn't know anything and how wrong I was. And then I started to believe it. And when I started to believe it is when I started to get scared. And then that fear was capitalized on to keep me scared. And we had a conversation not that long ago, and like our last kid in the house talking about how like he has that ambition that like, I've got this. I know what I'm going to do. I'm like, why the fuck are we going to tell him any different? Keep believing in yourself. Keep believing you're going to figure it out. Keep knowing that you've got this, because you do. Like, why would we plant anything other than confidence?
Yeah.
Like, we don't need to tear him down. We don't need, like, actually, you don't know. Yeah, you fucking do. And then if that works out, great. And if it doesn't, you'll figure it out. You know what to do. Keep going. And you're like, now I know. Like, you have that now. And inside, I'm like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. My heart is broken. It hurts. And I have to just, like, I don't know what to do. But I know that it's like, I don't know. At this point, it's not a cognitive know what to do. It's I'm just following my feelings. and which means that like I'm feeling a lot of pain. There's a lot of release. There's a lot of like literally physically being bombarded at night with the pain waves and just relaxing my body and allowing the pain waves to be, allowing them to flow, allowing the anxiety to flow, allowing it to like do what it's supposed to do and move through. And then getting up and trying something new and getting inspired and going in that direction. I don't have a fucking clue. I don't know what to do next. I don't have my 1-2 step. And that feels like it should be scary, right? I should be like, I don't know what to do. But I'm like, I'm just going to like let my internal compass navigate me. And it sounds like reckless, like going towards what feels good. And I don't mean like just this like pleasure, completely obsessed with pleasure. It's not that. It's just, it's almost like the calm, following the calm, like the part that lights up and feels calm. I used to go for safety. What feels safe? What feels safe? What feels safe? And then that was always like assessing fear, looking for fear, finding where I could keep the fear out. My obsession with safety was completely rooted in my obsession for fear. And so I'm just like, whew, I don't know what to do. And I'm just going to go with it. And when I have direction, follow the direction. When I see a 1, 2, 3, follow the 1, 2, 3. But it's not a 1, 2, you should. It's a okay. And then flipping it up. Like this works for now and trusting that like my 1, 2, like wherever I'm directed, maybe I continue on that path, but maybe that's just the path that it takes me to here. So I'm not holding on to like, this is what it'll look like. Some things I am. I'm trying to not, because the more I hold on to things, those are the things that go away. So I'm like, whoo, just going to let go. So maybe it goes this way and then it completely pivots and we're like, okay, over here, I'm just going with it. I'm just going with it and making the best possible choices that I can make in at the time. Like I said earlier, and came to fuck it up. It's okay. I don't know what to do. So it's cool that you do. It's cool.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Because what I'm hearing through my ears of what you just said is you are letting go and you're trusting and that you have faith and that you're relying upon the ability to trust your intuition and discernment in the moment to make the right decision, and knowing that even if you make the wrong decision, it's still okay and you're going to be okay, and you have faith and trust in that. And I'm saying the exact same thing.
Right.
Like I'm not sitting here I wasn't saying like, well, I have a vast amount of knowledge and I've encountered so many issues in my life that I know how to fix so many different things.
I know what not to do. I just don't always know what to do.
So I'm not sitting here saying I've accumulated so much information and knowledge and insight.
I didn't hear that. I heard you say you have direction.
But the direction that I have is the same that you have. I'm letting go and I'm trusting.
Okay.
I have faith that
we're following the same map.
Yeah, we really are.
Yeah.
It's just the whatever's next map.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. Right. And I believe and I have faith and I have confidence, and I'm just moving in that direction towards that freedom. And it's way less about, hey, let me go, and more about just like, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine's more less about, I'll fix this. I got this. I can handle this. I can take care of this. And being like, oh, fuck. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Okay, let's move on. Let us know your thoughts on this, if this resonated or not. I'm curious to see if you see any other, like if you see the same correlations between your midlife crisis and your teenage life crisis or whatever was happening for you when you were a teenager.
I know. We get into like, there's so much, like, I'm like, come on, we got Saturn return, we got Uranus opposition, we got Chiron return. There's so many things that I'm like, there's more. You're like, it feels like it's a really long time. I'm like, it is.
Right.
It is.
Your midlife crisis isn't done and over with in 6 months or a year.
Your midlife reframe opportunity.
I think that's the whole thing, is it's an opportunity. The one that happens in teenage, right, that's an opportunity to conform or not to conform. And the truth of it too, right, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that your life doesn't matter. That's not what I'm saying. It's like whatever happens is okay. Whatever happens is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So let's go on. Let's answer the question.
Blah, blah, blah.
Let's wrap.
Okay.
I need some lunch in my belly. So
okay, let's do it.
Let me read it this week.
You want to read it this week?
Yeah. Okay. Question this week is, I'm working on boundaries. Oh, by the way, you can call in questions. It's 423-521-0355. Email questions. People send them to us via social, DM, whatever. They all work. We'll get your question. I'm working on boundaries, but how can I communicate them without sounding like a total jerk? I love it. What's your thoughts?
Oh,
babe?
I have to go because I'm so ready for you to go first. How can I communicate them without sounding like a total jerk? Sound like a jerk.
Sound like a jerk.
Yeah, sound like a jerk. When we're practicing boundaries and not familiar with boundaries, boundaries seem like our stories like we're being mean and hurtful and like we're being a jerk. And that's, first of all, that's not the case, but you have to, like, you don't have to, but going through that, it feels like that. It brings that up because you're fighting against all of that thing that kept you from making the boundaries, that kept you from like listening to you and only like helping, or I'm trying to find words. I'm trying not to say conform, but going against your boundaries. So when you start to honor your boundaries, it does feel like you're mean and it does feel like you're being a jerk. And if you are being mean and your boundaries are sloppy and maybe they are too rigid and you are like, that's okay because you're learning and you get to practice and you get to get it wrong. And then you're going to start to find those healthy boundaries. But without allowing yourself to practice and be willing to get it wrong, the option is to not set them. And as much as we all want to get it right out of the gate, we don't want to get them wrong. We don't want to cause pain. We don't want to do anything wrong. We just want to get it right. That's not a human real, like,
it's not how humans work.
Yeah, we're going to get it wrong. So it's so okay. And sound like a jerk and keep trying to set those boundaries and like find that voice in you that you're honoring. And then as your boundaries progress, maybe some of them change. Maybe you word them differently. Maybe there are apologies that you'll need to give in the future. And maybe these boundaries that you're setting that you feel like you're being such a jerk, you're going to be like, holy shit, that wasn't even strong enough. Here's my boundary. And you say it with this authenticity coming from you and this comfort knowing that your boundaries are for you. That you are, how am I going to word this? Am I going to go too much here? Your boundaries aren't about controlling somebody else's behaviors. Your boundaries are about what you are going to do if these behaviors and these situations happen. So you get to sound like a jerk. You get to sound kind and compassionate. You get to just practice all over it and just keep going and keep moving. Boundaries are really, really hard and they're really messy. So the ones that you're scared to set are probably the ones that are really, really important to set. So keep setting them and keep exploring boundaries.
Yeah, they take a lot of practice. So you got to start somewhere. I would agree with everything you said. Yeah. They're hard. Take practice. You're going to be a jerk. You're going to mess them up. They're fluid. They change. You know, they're going to evolve. They're going to get stronger. They're going to get weaker. All of those things apply. So, but they're important.
Yeah.
So, okay. That's it.
That's it.
That's the podcast.
Okay.
That's all, folks. Really dated ourselves with that one, right?
I don't even know if we're like, I don't even know if that's appropriate references anymore. I feel like there's some
probably isn't. It definitely isn't. Erase that part in this episode.
Delete.
We'll see you guys next week.